All right, I hope everyone is enjoying their meal. Thanks, Dan. Okay, I am going to introduce our two keynote speakers for the night, Brian and Michael Sullivan. Brian and Michael Sullivan have special relationships with Prentice. Brian is a father of two former Prentice students and a long-standing board member, and Michael as a Prentice alum and past employee. Brian first joined the Prentice Board of Directors in 2006, after the graduation of his youngest son, Michael. His oldest son, Patrick, graduated from Prentice in 1999. Brian is a journalist who launched Risk Information Incorporated with his wife, Tracie, in 1993. Their publishing and conference company focuses on information for the property and casualty insurance industry. Tracie and Brian are grateful to Prentice for helping build a foundation upon which both sons have thrived academically, professionally, and personally. Patrick is now a skilled journalist who helps run Risk Information, and Michael is a uniquely qualified special education teacher. Michael was just 5 years old when his older brother first started at the Prentice School. After a challenging first few years in school, he too made his way to the Lassen Street campus, where he thrived both personally and academically. He later graduated with honors from JSerra Catholic High School and earned his BA from Concordia University and his Master of Education at National University. While completing his education, Michael worked as an instructional assistant at Prentice, spending time in almost every grade level. Today, Michael is a special education teacher in the Capistrano Unified School District. Brian and Michael.
Mic pack on. Okay, Devin stole about half our stuff. So it is a thrill to be here. There's a lot of things you can do in terms of getting involved in organizations, but very few of them is it always happy at the end. So it's really wonderful to be involved at Prentice, and I thought we might share a bit of our story because it sort of runs the full Prentice gamut. Our journey, as Devin mentioned, oh, by the way, Michael has some advice for Devin. There is a way to be more comfortable speaking in public. And Michael, what is it?
Pretend everyone in the room is about 9 years old. Works wonders.
Because that's what he does.
Yeah.
So our journey started when Michael's older brother, Patrick, was in second or third grade, and a teacher called my wife, Tracie, in and said, he's just not retaining the information. And we knew he was smart, but we could see he was struggling. And Tracie asked a very insightful question. She said, are you teaching him that the same way every time? And the teacher said, of course I am. What else would I do? And the next day, Patrick wasn't at that school anymore. And through some serendipity, I was coaching like a 7-year-old basketball team, and one of the players went to Prentice, and mother was on the board. We wound up at Prentice, and it was a transformational experience. So a few years later, those of you who have had children come to Prentice, you always have to go through this journey. It's intellectual, it's emotional, it's financial. And we had made that journey with Patrick, but we weren't paying any attention to this one because he was different than his brother. So since they're not exactly the same, of course, they don't need the same solution. And Tracie, again, was talking to one of Michael's teachers who said, I just can't get him to sit in his seat. So I let him sit in the beanbag chair in the corner of the reading corner instead of in his chair. So Tracie was understandably upset. And the teacher said, but that's not what's really interesting about this conversation. He's got his back to the class, his nose in the book, in the beanbag chair, and he's calling out the answers to the math questions, especially the ones the other students can't get. So again, we'd already been on this journey. You'd think we'd be smart enough, but it's hard to see. And I think that's one of the challenges for every Prentice parent is making that decision. oh my goodness, I need to do this. And you think what it is it's a big giant event. It's going to be very disruptive for the child. And actually, Michael can maybe talk to you a little bit about what it was like showing up on campus.
So when I think about being a student apprentice, when I think about arriving at Prentice, I don't have much to say about it. It was just a school. Yeah, we had aides in our classroom. We had more individual attention. The class sizes were a little smaller, but it was just a regular school to me. It didn't take me long to notice the differences, though. Again, we had those small classes, those small groups where kids were getting the help they needed sort of at the level they were at. We had an aide in every room, so there was more ability to break kids out into smaller groups. There was a smaller ratio. For me, that really drove home in 4th grade. I got enrolled in the cursive club. It was a very exclusive club of 4 people where we worked on penmanship. It was glorified line writing. We practiced writing in cursive over and over and over and over and over and over again. Wasn't like the chess club or the basketball club, but it was sort of the individual attention I needed, sort of targeted as a skill, because my handwriting was and is bad. And there were other differences too. We had Slingerland. Now Prentice has Orton Gillingham. Those Slingerland lessons, we had special Slingerland pencils with no erasers. They were the size of a log with these weird triangle shapes. They were huge. We had special Slingerland paper. We had Slingerland lessons. We had all sorts of wonderful things targeted towards sort of the needs of the Prentice kids. But like every other student at every other school, we made mission models in 4th grade. We wrote state reports in 5th grade. We went on field trips. We went to camp. We had the same experiences. We learned all the same things that everyone else did. So for me as a student, it just sort of felt normal, like school.
And that I think is one of the things we get all the time when people come to Prentice. And this was the great gift that Sharon and Harriet, Dan and Laurel Clark and others in those early days bought a campus, no mortgage. Prentice has no mortgage, which is what makes it possible. That is a regular school, is a school. And so the kids come and there's a comfort level. And so we quickly saw not only did these children learn differently, but the spectrum of the children and the spectrum of their learning abilities was incredibly vast. And I always marvel at how the educators there can handle it, because you have someone like Michael who has to be in the cursive club, and I still can't read your handwriting. And your poor students with the whiteboard must be awful. But at the same time, he was they recognized his skills in math, and he was taking pre-algebra and geometry in 8th grade. And so this is what makes Prentice special, is you have to work at kind of both ends of the spectrum, right? Okay, this is where this kid is struggling, but we can't, and this is where sometimes other schools fall down, we can't let their special talents wither as a consequence. And so it was really a magical thing. And so I think one of my best explanations for how Prentice works across that spectrum of students was there was a family there when our oldest son Patrick was there, and they had two boys at the same time in the school. And they were both dyslexic, but on different levels. So one of them fought his way through high school, college, career, kind of traditional path that most students have. His brother was much more severely dyslexic. And by the time he left Prentice, he might have been reading at the 3rd grade level. And you wouldn't think that that's a success, except for they squeezed every ounce of ability out of him. And he became a very, very successful and well-known chef. And he needed those skills. He wasn't going to be a lawyer, but he always loved to cook. He went to culinary school. He could handle that, and he runs his own kitchen in a fairly big business. Both major successes. Now, Michael has told me that he's reluctant to tell that story to parents in like 3rd and 4th grade because people don't want to hear it. But that's the magic of Prentice, is finding students where they are and leading them to where they should be, and let them be who they are without freighting them down with expectations that doesn't fit.
Yeah. Learning challenges like those boys, they never really go away. My handwriting, personally, remains closer to hieroglyphics than English. It's even worse on the whiteboard. My students are constantly saying, Mr. Sullivan, what's that say up there? Is that an A or a P? And I'm like, I'll turn around, and I'll look, and I'll think for a moment, and I'll go, what is that? Oh! And then I'll erase it, and I'll fix it, and they'll still not know what it says. But at least we tried. Prentice teaches you how to work with those challenges. I learned how to work with those challenges myself, and it prepares you to deal with the new ones that come up later down the line in the future, both in high school and in college and in the rest of your life. In those later years in high school and in college, and honestly at Prentice, I wrote most of my papers through dictation. My dad and I would sit up in his office, and I would rant for an hour or 2 or 3 as we wrote papers through dictation and through conversation and through arguing and the whole gamut of it. Honestly, as I sat down to put my ideas on paper for this very talk, I found myself totally stumped. I sat down, I went to type, and nothing happened. I stared at a wall. But I was able to turn to my dad and express everything I had to share totally fine. It's just that block, that challenge, it never goes away, and you just find ways around it. You find solutions. You have to think outside the box to solve those problems. Along the way, I must have learned to write, though, because in high school I had to take the AP English exam, and I got a perfect score on that exam with no accommodations, no anything. They gave me a blue book and a pencil and an hour to write. And I looked down at that question, and the words wouldn't come. And so what I did was I did what I did best, and I found where the words would come. I took that question, I believe it was about Native American tribes and sort of cultural plights, and I thought about a book I was reading. I was reading Dune at the time. And so I spent an hour writing 5 pages about Dune instead of about answering the question. And every couple of paragraphs, I would realize that I was supposed to answer the question. And I would go back and I would tie what I just talked about into Dune, and then I would go back to talking about Dune. And I would write, I had to think outside the box. I had to use my disability, my learning differences to address that problem in a way that worked for me. I had to find where the words were coming, and I wrote where that was. Apparently the College Board liked it and could read what I wrote. So...
Or maybe they couldn't.
Maybe they couldn't, and that's where they felt bad for me, and they gave me the score anyways. I don't know. It worked.
So, Prentice changed our family. Those of you who've had children at Prentice know that struggle before you find it, where you know you have a child that can learn, but they're in an environment where it's not working. And that is such a painful place to be. So Prentice changed our family because not only did it allow Michael and his brother to flourish, but it allowed our family to have calm at night. I think one of the biggest winners from this was their sister, who sits between them and didn't have to listen to the disaster that happens when you have an educationally stressed household. So some of you have educationally stressed households, I can tell. So when Michael graduated in 2005, Tracie and I were talking about how we were going to support Prentice basically forever. We thought 2 things. 1, we owe a personal debt to this place. And 2, I know we all have a responsibility to help in society. We heard Sharon talk so eloquently about her husband's admonition to do that, to be generous. And we thought, there is no better place to put our efforts than Prentice. And so Tracie had spent 10 years working as she ran the Parent Guild and a bunch of galas along with many other people here in this room. So it was my turn. So Harriet Harris grabbed my arm and dragged me into the board happily 20 years ago. And thank you. And I have to tell you that the board is a small group and incredibly supportive. And that same warmth you feel at Prentice, that sense of this is important, we're going to focus on these children, we're going to help them. We feel that the experience on the board is the same. Everyone is there, everyone's rowing together. Sometimes times are tough, right? I mean, Every institution goes through waves like this. We happen to be on a really good spot now, but we haven't always been there. It's been one of the joys of my life, to be honest, to be first to have benefited from Prentice, my entire family, and then to participate in the continuation of that.
I'm not really sure that anyone could have predicted the paths my brother and I would choose. My brother Patrick, he became a business journalist and an analyst, even though he can't spell to save his life. I honestly think if you put him in a life or death situation and made him try to take a spelling bee, he would not survive. He would not make it. I chose to be a teacher, having had my life changed by Prentice and by special education teachers all the way up the ladder. I think, calling back to your responsibility, I felt as that fire of education started to lighten me and I kind of figured out that's kind of where I wanted to go, I thought back to my experience at Prentice. I thought back to the change I saw in my classmates and in my life, and I felt responsible to give back and to be able to give more children, more students that opportunity. I spent a decade working at Prentice, as Devin said, working as a classroom aide as I pursued my bachelor's and then my credential and then my master's. Today, I'm a special education teacher in San Juan Capistrano, working at an elementary school. Every day, honestly, every moment of every day, I put to use the lessons I learned at Prentice, both as a student and as an educator, as an aide. I think about my peers, I think about my teachers. I look to the students I work with now and think about the students they remind me of from the past, both as a student and as an educator. And I think to myself, what did I see happen for these students at Prentice? Well, how can I give them some of that experience? How can I help them with their specific needs? I look to each student as an individual challenge. They don't need to fit into a box. They don't have to fit into a box. And I'm constantly trying to stop myself personally, and I know this is a challenge for a lot of educators, from focusing on the small things that aren't essential. Thinking about students who can't sit in a chair quite properly. They might fold up like a pretzel. Or I had a student who once could not handle geometry problems unless we rotated the triangles to be just so. If the triangles rotated even a little off, she couldn't handle it. I think to an interaction I had with a coworker a couple of months ago. He came to me and he said, Michael, this boy can't keep his shoes on. What should I do? And my response was, who cares? Is he learning? Is he listening? Like, what matters? Why does he need his shoes on to learn? Just look up. It doesn't matter if they, it doesn't matter what their challenges are as long as we meet them where they are. Those small things, are they sitting down? Do they need something to move their feet on? Just all of those things we can adjust for them, because that's what they need to succeed. Those challenges though, they are just that, challenges, not barriers. Just because somebody struggles to read or write or do math, as a student, doesn't mean they can't learn, they can't grow, they can't succeed and have a wonderful life. I want to thank all of you who have support this life-changing place. It's so full of beauty and so full of joy, and your help will help it continue forever. Thank you.
Right. Michael and Brian, thank you. I think this was a long time coming, so I'm glad we finally got you guys up here. Thank you for your willingness to share your stories about your personal connections to Prentice. Your experiences as a Prentice student, parent, employee, and board member offer a very unique perspective that we all appreciate hearing about. Brian, your loyalty to Prentice has a profound impact on the longevity of the school, and I hope you know that. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to helping students who learn differently. So now, we're all gonna enjoy dessert. Make sure you have a full belly before we get into the live auction and then our scholarship paddle raise. This is the last time you'll hear from me, so